We keep hearing that Africa has a massive business potential and that it is the continent of the future. But what are these business opportunities? And more importantly, how can Blaxiters, African repatriates, and continental Africans join forces to capitalize on the most promising growth sectors and unlock Africa's massive business potential? In other words, how can we leverage Africa to become successful businessmen and businesswomen on the continent? Well, let's dive in, let's find out, and let's get to work. Hello family, welcome to AfriKili, where we advocate for the creation of a federal United States of Africa by focusing on three pillars: Pan-African history, Pan-African business, and Pan-African political action. As a reminder, the word AfriKili is a contraction of the words Africa and Akili, which means intelligence in Swahili, the most spoken African language in Africa. So AfriKili stands for African intelligence. You can also read our blog online or sign up to have new publications delivered directly to your mailbox by entering your email address on our website, www.afrikili.com. And of course, if you like our video and content, please consider clicking on the like button and subscribing to this channel. In our previous AfriKili video, which was part 2 of our 3-part series on Blaxit, we pivoted from the push factors that were pushing Blaxiters out of the Western world, and we looked at the pull factors that are making the African continent an attractive destination for Blaxiters and repatriates. If you recall, we explored 3 attractive factors. There was the sense of community, the Year of Return initiative, and Africa's business opportunities. Well, in today's video, which is the 3rd and final part on our series on Blaxit, we will focus on how to successfully conduct business on the African continent. We will specifically look at how Blaxiters, African repatriates, and continental Africans can join forces to capitalize on the most promising growth sectors and unlock Africa's massive business potential. Now, before starting, I want to clarify the context of this video and just make sure we set the proper expectations. Given the scope of our videos, it would really not be realistic to try to analyze extensively all the ways in which Blaxiters and continental Africans can collaborate to unlock Africa's business potential. The topic is simply way too broad. So consequently, instead of focusing on heavy empirical data, this video will be very accessible by focusing on general observations that then entrepreneurs can focus on and target. For those of us who are decision makers at large companies, policy makers, academics, or entrepreneurs that would like more robust empirical evidence after watching this video, well, I would like to recommend 3 books that were written by a mix of African writers who are still on the continent and others that have thrived professionally outside the continent. So the first such book is this one, which is called Unlocking Africa's Business Potential. So this book was written in 2020 by Landry Signé. He's a senior and fellow at the Brookings Institute, which is a think tank based in Washington, D.C. He's also a professor at Stanford University, one of the best universities in the world. So in this book, Landry Signé analyzes business opportunities in many African sectors that have a high potential of return on investment, and he relies on case studies to help decision making. Now, the second book is called Africa Business Revolution. This was written in 2028 by Ashaleke Mutsachironga and George DeVoe while they were senior leaders at the African offices of McKinsey & Company, which is one of the biggest international consulting firms in the world. This book brands itself as the guide on how to succeed in doing business in Africa. It is designed to help executives and entrepreneurs understand and seize opportunities to build sustainable businesses in Africa. Now, the book is also based on case studies, interviews with some of Africa's most exclusive and famous executives. Now, the third book is 101 Ways to Make Money in Africa. This book was written by John Paul Iwowa and Hanet Prokreisen. So this book provides business ideas, success stories, and business opportunities for entrepreneurs who live in Africa and those who will live outside the continent but would like to start a business there. So now, in addition of these 3 books, you might be interested in 2 additional books that were written by experts who are not Africans. All right, so first there is Success in Africa. So this was written in 2013 by Jonathan Bierman, who was a senior fellow at Columbia University. This book provides an on-the-ground perspective, personal stories, insights on how to win from many different ambitious CEOs who have succeeded in Africa. Now, the 5th and final book is this one. It's called Entrepreneurial Afrique, written in 2016 by Jean-Michel Severino, who is the former CEO of the French development agency AFD and the CEO of Investisseurs and Partenaires, which is an investment fund which is focused on African SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Now, this book introduces African men and women that are leading successful SMEs in multiple high-growth sectors on the African continent. So I think these 5 books are a great place to start if you're interested in getting fact-based insight on conducting business in Africa, beyond just the repetitive negative headlines that are pushed by mainstream media outlets. Okay, let's now explore how exactly Blaxiters and the entire Pan-African diaspora can capitalize on Africa's business potential. I will attack this subject in 2 parts. First, I will provide a short list of some of the most promising growth sectors in Africa while highlighting business opportunities for some of those sectors. And second, I will propose some concrete ways for Blaxiters and Africans to collaborate and come together in order to successfully unlock Africa's business potential. So now let's look at some of the most promising African growth sectors and some opportunities. When we look at growth sectors on the African continent, it is important to understand the true size and diversity of Africa. The continent is not a monolith environment, but rather it is a mammoth landmass made up of 54 countries that are culturally, geographically, and politically diverse. So this map should help you appreciate the true size of Africa. You can see that the continent is bigger than China, the United States of America, France, Spain, India, Germany, and the whole of Eastern Europe combined. This is very different from the Mercator map that has been ingrained in most of our collective psyches since childhood, which depicts Africa on a much smaller scale. And so this can make it hard for us to really grasp this reality. As a result, when Blaxiters and Pan-African diaspora are assessing growth sectors, it is very important to contextualize it to the African region they want to relocate to or explore or do business. Another important point is that no matter what business sector we are researching across Africa, usually we will find 4 factors that drive long-term growth projections. And those 4 factors are: 1, we have the population, which is very young and fast growing. It is expected to reach 2.5 billion people by the year 2050. 2, we have the workforce that is massive and rapidly growing. 3, we have the urbanization rate, which is the fastest in the world. And 4, we have technological change, which is accelerating. Let's now get to the points that we have all been waiting for. What are the business sectors that are projected to grow exponentially in the coming years? I've decided to highlight 7 business sectors that are very interesting, and the list is certainly not exhaustive. Sector number 1, we have consumer markets and distribution. Africa is one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world. There are roughly 1.3 billion consumers today that are projected to become about 1.7 billion by the year 2030. Now, even though Africans have a relatively low purchasing power, household consumption throughout the continent grew by 4% between the years 2010 and 2015 to reach $1.4 trillion. And you know what? It is projected to reach $2.5 trillion by 2025 and $8 trillion by 2050. These numbers are just astounding. They present tremendous opportunities in consumer markets that are not saturated by large vendors. It also means that several markets will explode over the next few years. Several international advisory firms like McKinsey, Bain & Company, and others are very bullish on African growth prospects. They're advising companies today to seriously consider entering the African consumer markets or else miss significant growth opportunities. Well, I also believe that Blaxiters and the Pan-African diaspora and Africans on the continent should also be bullish and do everything in their power to occupy leading roles in the African business growth narrative. Sector number 2, we have agriculture and the food industry. Now here there's 4 facts that should grab your attention. The first fact is that 60% of all of the arable land in the entire planet are in Africa. 2, since the mid-1990s, agriculture and agribusiness have been among the fastest growing sectors in Africa. Fact number 3, it is projected that by the year 2030, agriculture and agro-processing will remain the largest sector for business-to-business spending in Africa to reach $915 billion. And fact 4, according to the World Bank, the sector will be worth about $1.9 trillion per year by the year 2050. No matter how you look at it, this sector offers many great investment opportunities for Blaxiters and the Pan-African diaspora. Like most sectors, there are challenges, yes, but Africa also offers great advantages to enter this sector. For example, arable land is relatively low cost. The climate are suited for a diversity of crops. Labor is readily available and low cost in rural areas, etc., etc. The third business sector is information and communication technology, also known as ICT. Now, the ICT sector is often simplified as internet, digital, and mobile services. However, the sector includes a broad range of products and services that enable storage, delivery, and exchange of information. Currently, Africa has a big ICT infrastructure gap, and addressing them is a massive opportunity. For example, many African governments and companies are increasingly looking to move their data from paper to a digital format. However, the large majority are still stuck on antiquated paper. So as a result, there are massive opportunities for Blaxiters and entrepreneurs that can design and offer solutions to help African governments and companies to dematerialize, which means helping them move on from paper to digital. The fourth business sector is manufacturing and industrialization. Most African countries continue to have very few factories. However, the sector has tremendous potential. When we consider that business-to-business spending is projected to reach almost $700 billion by the year 2030, this is a $200 billion increase compared to what it was in 2015. So as a matter of fact, McKinsey and many other firms consider Africa as the next great manufacturing center. Business sector number 5, we have infrastructure and construction. Some of the biggest opportunities in this sector lie in addressing infrastructure deficit related to unreliable electricity supply, insufficient telecommunication network, insufficient road networks, building manufacturing facilities, mining, etc. But also the rapid urbanization happening across Africa is also creating massive opportunities in building residential housing and commercial facilities. Business sector number 6, we have banking. Compared to other regions in the world, Africa has a very low bankerization rate, which means that there are big opportunities for both retail banking and digital banking. The continent has been the leader in adopting mobile money, which is helped by the fact that Africa has a high penetration of mobile phones. But also, the continent is only starting to scratch the surface of the financial technology potential, also known as fintech. For example, in 2021 alone, African startups raised a record-breaking $5 billion for fintech. This trend is expected to continue to grow. Finally, our 7th business sector is tourism. As a whole, the tourism industry in Africa is still at an early development stage. The growth of the industry has been slowed by factors such as infrastructure, security risk, economic risk, etc. However, Africa is well positioned to become a leading destination for global tourism given its unique story and beautiful natural endowment. According to the World Travel and Tourism Council, over the next 10 years, the African tourism industry will grow by about 30% and generate about $36 billion in direct investment from the United States alone. As I mentioned before, this list of 7 industries that we've just discussed is definitely not exhaustive, but it should help you paint a clear picture of tremendous business opportunities for Blaxiters, the Pan-African diaspora, and continental African to seize and capitalize on. Let's move on to the second part of our topic, and look at how Blaxiters and Africans can collaborate towards unlocking Africa's massive capital. I would like to stress the importance of humility when Blaxiters and the Pan-African diaspora decide to seize business opportunity on the continent. Coming from the developed world does not mean that you have or you are automatically equipped with the necessary best practices and resources to conquer Africa. Many who entered the world next growth market thinking that they could just copy and paste models that have worked in other continents quickly became disillusioned and were sent backpacking with their tails between their legs. As a matter of fact, in our last video, Black Seed Part 2, if you recall, we discussed the importance of preventing resentment by developing a genuine desire to build relationships and learn from each other when entering Africa. The same applies to building successful businesses in Africa. Now, beyond the intangibles, it is also important to have a very clear strategy before entering the African business space. As Sun Tzu stated in the popular book The Art of War, tactics without strategy is the noise of boots before defeat. To give you guidance, I will summarize 4 strategic areas that are discussed in detail in this book, Africa Business Revolution, that we introduced earlier. So your first strategic focus should be to prioritize the markets that matter the most to you. Now, whether you are an individual Blaxiter, an entrepreneur, or a company looking to enter the African market, remember that Africa is made of 54 countries that are culturally, geographically, and politically diverse. These countries can be very informal and hard to navigate for newcomers. Therefore, you should map your strategy and contextualize the business opportunity to the country that you are targeting. From the get-go, from the start, you should focus on getting local knowledge and associating yourself with local partners that can provide you with the local know-how. Also, understand that a strong ecosystem and a strong network are necessary for you to win in the long term. You will need to connect with a network that will guide you with some basic necessities, such as, for example, getting reliable water, reliable power, but also giving you local insight on acquiring reliable suppliers, or also navigating the regulatory environment. If you're in a country without a business hub or an ecosystem for your industry, consider starting one, because ultimately your network will determine your net worth. Your second strategic focus should be to focus on fulfilling a real unmet need. Blaxiters and repatriates should avoid the temptation of just packaging product and services from the West and delivering them as is to African markets. That is a recipe for failure. Instead, it is important to associate yourself with local partners that can help clearly identify your customer's unmet need. You should put yourself in the shoes of your African customers and tailor your product and services according to how they will engage with you. You will most likely have to innovate your business model to keep your operations lean and keep your prices low. Keep in mind that there's also mobile and digital technologies that are rapidly being adopted across Africa, and you can leverage them to grow your customer bases while controlling your operational cost. Given that cheap Chinese products are flooding African markets, it is particularly important to drive your innovation while keeping your prices low. Your third strategic focus should be to build resilience for the long term. You will hear many tales of overnight success stories in Africa. You'll hear how people are able to get lucrative government contracts and almost immediately go from rags to riches. There are certainly elements of truth to these stories, and I will not discount them as baseless. However, it would be foolish for Blaxiters and African repatriates to base their entire African business strategy on the hopes of negotiating lucrative government contracts. The responsible approach is to understand your local context and focus on winning in the long term. In most African countries, inconsistent government policies represent serious short-term volatility risk. Consequently, I would highly recommend building healthy relationships with governments when deciding to conduct business in Africa. Finally, building long-term resilience obviously requires having working capital. My advice is that Blaxiters and African repatriates should not expect to raise early venture capital on the continent. It is important to enter the African market with enough working capital to sustain the launch and early business stages. Your fourth and final strategy focus should be to unleash Africa's entrepreneurial talent. Blaxiters and African repatriates can generate profits by partnering with entrepreneurs on the African continent. Africa has a young and entrepreneurial population. They often have innovative concepts, but they just lack the financial means to prove them or grow them. Since capital acquired outside the continent can potentially have a much higher return on the continent compared to the West, business-oriented Blaxiters and African repatriates should seriously consider investing in many cash-strapped entrepreneurs with high potential upside. With this approach, Blaxiters can quickly gain prospective business partners on the continent, and they can quickly gain a hands-on experience on how to navigate Africa's business environment. Ultimately, setting up structures to facilitate strategic investments in Africa's entrepreneurs and creating formal joint ventures could allow investors across the Pan-African diaspora to profit from businesses in Africa without having to physically relocate on the continent. So there you have it. As we have seen through this video, Africa is truly the world's next biggest business growth continent. We have highlighted 7 industries that are projected to grow exponentially, and we have highlighted business opportunities with those industries. We noted how Blaxiters and members of the Pan-African diaspora that are assessing business growth sectors should remember that Africa is made up of 54 countries that are culturally, geographically, and politically diverse. Consequently, they should contextualize the growth sectors to the specific African region they're willing to relocate to or explore. Finally, we also discussed 4 strategic areas of focus to help Blaxiters and Africans collaborate efficiently in order to successfully unlock Africa's business potential. For more detailed or empirical information, remember to check out the 5 books that are recommended. So as I'm concluding this series of Blaxit, if you are new to the AfriKili platform, we seek a grandiose dream of unity across the African world to finally put Africa back on track towards unity and prosperity towards a United States of Africa. We are seeking a revolution in changes that cannot be done by one person or one movement. It can only be done by a collective effort, which is why AfriKili strongly advocates for working in coalitions, pooling our resources and aggregating our efforts. Now, whether you reside on the African continent, or you relocated after your birth, or you are a part of the global Pan-African diaspora, you are essential for this to work. Let us join our efforts in this cause within the AfriKili movement or within coalitions. Let us join the fight for a United States of Africa, which will be for the benefit of Africa, the entire African diaspora, and humanity. Thank you for your attention. And before closing, let me remind you to like our video and subscribe to our AfriKili YouTube channel, but also very important, sign up with your email on our blog at www.afrikili.com. And finally, please like or follow our social media profiles on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. There's an exciting journey ahead of us towards a better Africa and a better world. Can Blaxiters, African repatriates, and continental Africans join forces to capitalize on the most promising growth sectors and unlock Africa's massive business potential? Yes, we can. It will happen. I have this dream. Let's get to work. AfriKili, African intelligence, to build a new Africa. Until next time, peace be with you.